Welcome, sports fans, boys and girls of all ages, to episode number 3 of Garbage Time Takes. My name is Derek, and with me today is my co-host, Bobby.
Bobby is here and accounted for. Our normal third member, Dennis, is asleep at the wheel. We have no idea where he is.
There's an APB
out for him. Funny little segue about Dennis. We had our intramural flag football playoff game this past Sunday. Our starting quarterback is none other than Dennis. And Dennis unfortunately threw an interception, and as the corner was running it back, Dennis made a diving tackle, a diving flagpole, as I should say, at the outreach stretch, and unfortunately separated his shoulder.
The whole point of flag football is to avoid injuries, and even then, Dennis succumbed to a freak accident, if you will. A
freak accident in which he remained out for the rest of the game, and our season unfortunately ended that very day. But it should be a great episode, I'm hoping, without him, as it is, we're going to call it Hate Week here on Garbage Time Takes.
Yes, we will. So, moving forward with the theme of Hate Week, we got the Browns and Steelers had a fight for the ages, something that we had never seen before in our lifetime. Bobby, what did you think about the whole situation? Mason Rudolph getting tackled. You can argue that Myles Garrett took it too far, the clock was winding down. Garrett sort of, drives him into the turf. And then a scrum ensues. And all of a sudden, punches are being thrown and helmets are being wielded as weapons.
Indeed. It's something that I think it's safe to say has never before been seen in the NFL.
I don't think it has either.
Really, it's... The whole thing that baffles me the most about the whole thing is that the game was over.
It was.
There was very few seconds, like 8
over.
seconds, I believe, left in the game. Pittsburgh just trying to put a desperation heave maybe together or something. And in a, I don't know what went through his head at the time, in a absolutely dumbfounded move, I'll call it. He, tries to, make a little bit, plays balls out of his hands, and he's trying to drag him to the ground.
The ball was thrown well before he was actually taking him to the ground. It was all just a really weird,
sequence.
Event. Yeah, it was.
Following that, I'm sure you all have already seen the video by now if you're listening to this podcast, but, it's, Myles Garrett, suspensions had just been handed down at the time that we're reporting the podcast, and, out for the rest of the season is none other than Myles Garrett, and I think that was certainly warranted and predicted
so as well.
By everybody. Everybody in the national media believed that was going to happen. We saw the Browns and Steelers organization be fined $250,000 each, and then Pouncey, I think he's the center.
Yep, he's the center.
For the Steelers. He gets 3 games for some
defending
absolute,
his quarterback.
Some absolute.
He was taking his shots.
He took some shots, all right. That is for sure. And if you're the NFL, if you're a friend of, if that's your quarterback, your teammate, everybody can understand that you're going to hop in there and defend him. But obviously the NFL's got to do that for optics reasons. Can't have people, kicking and throwing punches out there on the field,
regardless of whether you're sticking up for your teammate or not.
Exactly. And then the last guy, I don't remember his name, sees one game for absolutely blindsided.
An absolute cheap shot, totally unnecessary. Just takes out Mason Rudolph out of nowhere.
The only thing that, and I'm going to pose this question.
Larry Ogunjobi.
Yeah.
There's something like that. Sorry for butchering your name, my friend.
Ogunjobi, I believe. He absolutely takes a cheap shot. And the only question, as I was about to say, that I would pose to you, Derek, is what were your thoughts on Mason Rudolph not receiving a fine or suspension? Because I know we heard a lot of contrasting debate about whether he kind of preempted it, whether he said something. We did see him kind of grab on Myles Garrett's helmet, try to rip it off, leading to maybe that retaliation. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think, I would have been fine either way if Mason Rudolph was suspended, fined, whatnot. I could have seen a suspension of 1 game. I could have seen some sort of, 10, 15K, 25K fine just for his instigation and involvement. But I don't have a problem with him not being suspended. I mean,
you brought up the hockey analogy.
I did, and that's what I was about to bring up. In hockey, when you have a fight and a guy is designated as the instigator, he gets a 2-minute minor attached to his 5-minute major for fighting. and that's the end of it. So I don't, the person that always gets caught is the retaliator, and that's just the nature of the beast. So regardless of whether Mason Rudolph said something, he tried pulling his helmet off or whatnot, at the end of the day, he didn't do any damage to Myles Garrett. Whereas Myles Garrett, who, this isn't an isolated incident for him.
Yeah, no, he's had a couple of questionable things.
Yeah, he's had some
He got Trevor Siemian, I believe.
Yeah, he's had some anger issues, pop up over the season. Had a lot of personal fouls early on. The one other thing I thought about with the whole ordeal was back in 2010 with Andre Johnson and Cortland Finnegan and their beef. Those dudes were swinging at each other full on.
Helmets off.
Helmets off. Helmets were yanked off. But the thing was, they didn't try to hit each other with each other's helmets.
Nope.
And that's where, Myles Garrett could have done some serious, harm to Mason Rudolph, and really, could have ended his career if he connects with a different part of the helmet. But just going back briefly to Finnegan and Johnson, neither of those guys ended up getting suspended.
No.
They got their $25K fine, and that was it. So that just speaks to, the severity of the issue that the NFL, sees with this. And, yeah, I have no problem with Myles Garrett being suspended indefinitely. It's going to require him to have to apply for reinstatement, since that's what happens with indefinite suspension. So he's going to have to prove himself capable of,
handling himself.
Yep, controlling his anger, and because it's really inexcusable.
Nope.
I mean,
it is.
You see oftentimes, Josh Norman and OBJ have had their issues. But when a player's helmet comes off, usually,
safety is definitely in question.
Yeah, usually that's the end of it. Maybe you start throwing punches with helmets off. But this is the first time I think anyone's actually seen a helmet be wielded as a weapon and actually striking someone in the head with their helmet. That's just, I'm
surprised even with the side of the helmet it didn't do more damage.
I was
phasing a little bit more.
I was too. I think what happened is when I watched that video in a bit more slow motion, the back of the helmet, that white area, I think it's a little bit cushioned.
It is.
And I think that's what
Striked.
I think that's what hit Mason Rudolph the most there. Maybe he got clipped by the harder part of his helmet, but he was really fortunate to not get smacked in the head by the crown of the helmet or the face mask. There's some serious damage that could have been done. So fortunately for Mason Rudolph, he's going to be able to come out unscathed for the most part. But yeah, it was definitely something I've never seen before, and we may never see something like that again.
And I think obviously the NFL is going to try to come down with a harsh penalty to prevent that, and they have come down promptly.
Yes, they did. Yeah, within 12 hours I think is when Myles Garrett's suspension was issued.
And really the only question that I've running through my head after the whole incident is, why is Myles Garrett even in the ball game at that point?
Right. Yeah.
Star player for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, talent and accolades are undeniable. But he would. But you're not risking injury with 8 seconds left, and you're up by 2 tubs.
Right.
I don't know why Freddie Kitchens had him in there.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, he was in there, and we saw what happened. And then a little known fact after the fact, when the Browns came back in there and take one final knee, they did not send Baker Mayfield into the game.
And it's an intelligent move
by Freddie. Yeah, Freddie made a good call there. The backup came in and took the knee, and that ended the whole thing. But as all the Browns players and employees that I heard talking about it, all came down very harshly on their teammate, saying it was inexcusable. And it was nice to see a prompt and immediate resolution to the conflict. And while it might have been entertaining to see in the moment,
it was extremely entertaining.
But you just it's always good to see a nice hockey fight. You never wish for anyone to be seriously injured, and unfortunately, that's what was borderline could have happened in that instance. A little bit different than somebody throwing punches at each other. So
yeah, I agree. So yeah, that's that. Just to recap, Myles Garrett is suspended indefinitely, and it will be for at least the rest of this season for sure. Marquise Pouncey was suspended 3 games for his protection of his quarterback, and that was really fun to see. He got his shots.
Oh
in
man,
for sure.
there was some large rights coming in. There's some swift
Yes,
rights
there
coming
was.
in, and let's not forget the kicks that were that may have ensued.
And then, of course,
But the cheap shot,
the cheap shot from the Browns D lineman straight out of nowhere. And then, of course, some people had a bit of an issue with Rudolph not receiving anything more than potentially a slap on the wrist, but not even a fine to come from Mason Rudolph.
I hope. I hope for the sake of just for rationalizing that Mason Rudolph did or said something.
Right.
Just I would hope no one would just
you
come
hope
off.
it wasn't unprovoked.
Yeah, unprovoked coming off the hinge like that.
Yes.
But that's just absolutely insanity what happened.
Yes. Yeah. So moving on, we have breaking news in the studio.
I mean, you couldn't write this.
You couldn't write this stuff. Perfect timing. Dennis, the co-host, our Cincinnati friend, has rejoined us out of nowhere.
I'm here.
The
I'm here.
APB.
The police brought him back.
The police brought him back. He's currently with us. Dennis, all is well now?
All is well.
All is well. That's great to
happy,
hear.
healthy, and in a sling. But other than that, I'm here and present, and so things are better.
Well, that's perfect. So, as we just finished recapping the Browns Steelers, we will move forward into this week's news in college basketball. Kentucky suffering an unprecedented upset.
Unprecedented.
At the hands of Evansville. The Aces, baby. The Aces. Dennis, Bobby, if someone wants to take the lead, what are your guys' thoughts on Kentucky, #1 team in the nation, losing at home to Evansville?
The beauty of college sports on full display, in my opinion.
I agree.
Just the fact that any team at any given night can come in and win, and that's what happens when you're a top team like Kentucky. You got a bunch of young players. You're riding high after beating Michigan State, and you lose focus a little bit because you think you're all that, and then all of a sudden Evansville, who's playing their Super Bowl, playing their the NBA Finals, you could call it, against Kentucky, goes out and just
They dominated the game.
Few shots go in, and all of a sudden they're right there and winning it. And so props off to Evansville, and can honestly say never heard of them before this very moment. But I'm proud to see Kentucky get knocked off.
I think everyone can get behind Big Blue Nation going down outside of Kentucky. Dennis?
That's right. I mean, especially a sport like college basketball. Yeah, upsets happen in college football too, but I really think that college basketball is one of those really unique sports in which any team can win on any given night, and this is a prime example. Early in the season, #1 ranked Kentucky, fresh off that win against Michigan State, and 2-0 Evansville now. And it's just absolutely insane. Any team can beat anybody on any given night. Evansville, Indiana, just out of nowhere. This is the beauty of March Madness, and we're seing it already in November.
We're seeing it in November.
And that's just so exciting. It gets me really excited for the rest of the season.
I agree. And what does that say about MSU, Bobby?
The Jabs are starting to
MSU
throw.
is next on the list. Does this mean Evansville is better than MSU? Because they did beat Kentucky.
They very well could be.
Unfortunately, the world
by
will
extension.
never know.
We'll
By
never know.
extension,
We'll never
baby.
know.
It's the rule of extension.
But all I know is Evansville better, carry the season through and make it to the tournament now.
That would be great to see, wouldn't it?
Because
I think that would be awesome.
Because
I would love that.
It means nothing if they just beat Kentucky and then fall off the face
That's
of the map.
true.
They need to put this together. I hope whoever's coaching for them emphasized that this is just one of many.
Yep.
It's a big one, but one of many.
I think their head coach was actually national championship with Kentucky. I think he was part of a national championship team. So
Oh my
as
goodness.
sort of a homecoming, comes in and wipes his
See you,
alma
John.
mater.
See you, John.
But yeah, continuing, with MSU, Bobby, they had a pretty impressive, gutsy performance last night against Seton Hall. Cassius Winston, condolences out to him. Still playing with a heavy heart, obviously, after the loss of his brother. What did you like out of MSU last night, Bobby?
Well, I like the fact that we cut down on the turnovers comparatively to our game against Kentucky. We played it this was an away game at Seton Hall, very very quality opponent. And we had performances from people that we don't normally expect to see them from, and I'll get to that a little bit later in our right bench ballers segment. But it was just an overall team performance. There was plenty of opportunities for us to lie down, especially being down, I believe it was 5 or 6 within the last 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
And somehow we bring it back to squeak out the win. But that's that's the experience. That's the Tom Izzo coaching.
Definitely the veterans on that team.
Being there before, knowing what to do with the situation, and then Cash Winston coming up with a big 3-pointer at the end.
Huge.
huge three, and then, obviously sealing the deal there. And as Tom Izzo said after the game, it really did feel like watching those last couple of minutes that was March Madness.
It did.
That anything could happen, and it's great to see Michigan State win one of those early big ones. And I hope they can keep it up with their game in a couple weeks against Duke. I'm hoping that they can win that one as well.
Yeah, it's especially nice after losing such a good game against Kentucky, when that was also an opportunity to beat one of those top-ranked teams.
Yeah, for sure. For those who don't know, that game was part of the Gavitt Games in honor of a former legendary Big East coach. Michigan also playing in the Gavitt Games. It's Big Ten versus Big East. Big Ten did come away victorious overall out of the 8 games played. They won 5-3. In Michigan, they took care of business against Creighton at home. That was really nice to see, especially coming off of that nail-biter that should have never been against App State. They took care of business. First half was shaky. Could definitely sense, I myself was anxious at least. Creighton was pretty much scoring at will, and we really didn't have an answer to stop them defensively. We shot the ball well in the first half, but Creighton was getting too many opportunities on offensive boards, getting too many open shots. In the second half, Juwan Howard made those adjustments that needed to be made, showed some good promising signs as our head coach there, got the guys locked down on defense, switched up some of the coverages on the ball screens, and we also got performance that we expect to see from here on out from Xavier Simpson and Isaiah Livers. Both had really tremendous games. Xavier knocked down a couple threes. Isaiah was able to create off the dribble. So really just a well-executed performance all the way around from there from Michigan. And tonight we get Elon. Hopefully that's a win. I would
hope so.
I would sure hope so. That would be a tough one to lose.
That would be rough.
At home, I'm assuming.
Yes, at home. So we just got to keep the train rolling there. But I definitely liked what I saw. Some clear signs of improvement going from week 1 to week 2, getting back to the fundamentals, also reducing turnovers. But I do hope to see some better rebounding effort going forward. Dennis, I can't say I've kept up that much on UC basketball recently.
Well, that's fair.
What have they been doing since that game against Ohio State?
Well, since that game against Ohio State, Derek, they're 2-0.
Okay.
They have successfully defeated Drake and Alabama A&M.
Oh, riveting games.
Two
Alabama
very exciting.
A&M.
Alabama A&M
D5.
by a score of 85-53. And so
putting up points.
it's exciting to see them put up points, especially with that game against Alabama A&M when they won 85-53. Top scorer Jaron Cumberland didn't even play. He just sat.
Oh, wow.
Not an injury. He just took a day off and
Got a
against
rest.
a team that we beat 30 points anyway.
There you go.
So successful couple of games for UC since that win against Ohio State, or since that loss against Ohio State.
That's right.
But
Don't you forget
certainly
that.
not. Yeah, don't you forget that. But certainly not reputable opponents. It's just nice to see them put up some points.
Yeah.
See guys score, that sort of thing. I don't know the last time I saw Cincinnati with a score at all in the 80s. Probably last year when they played these trash teams.
Yeah, probably.
Probably not since then.
Definitely a good sign to see that the offense can produce, regardless of the opponent, without Jaron Cumberland. I think, that team is most likely going to go as Jaron Cumberland goes. Would you agree with that?
I would completely agree.
And so, that's a promising sign that they can still, regardless of the opponent, it wasn't, 60 to 50 something. They did put up 80 points, so that's definitely got to be promising. Bobby, I know you had a surprise.
Oh, I did.
To talk about for college basketball that, just to preface this while Bobby's getting a little bit prepared here. Me and Bobby have a disdain for the American Conference.
Oh, no.
Home of the Cincinnati Bearcats.
Dennis knows where this is going.
I know exactly where this is going.
Which is Dennis's team. We think the American Conference is trash, and we don't hesitate to let Dennis know that at any point in time we can. Dennis, before Bobby starts here, do you have any idea of what this could be?
My best guess is it has something to do with none other than Memphis.
Well, Bobby, would you like to educate Dennis?
Unfortunately, Dennis, it's worse than you could have ever imagined.
Oh, no.
None other, last week on episode 2 of the podcast, I did my breakdown of some of the teams that I thought were a little bit iffy from the American Conference, and one of them was none other than the East Carolina Pirates.
Oh, okay.
The East Carolina Pirates
Not where I thought this was going.
Suffered a defeat at the hands of none other than Appalachian State basketball.
Oh, man.
And were defeated 62-68 in an absolute slugfest. Once again, reinforcing the ever more clear point.
It was March Madness at its finest.
March Madness at its finest. East Carolina, getting absolutely embarrassed here, just further proving that Cincinnati's got a cakewalk. I mean, Eastern Carolina committed 22 fouls. Absolutely horrendous.
22 fouls.
22 fouls.
Dang.
And, I mean, really, you just hate to see it.
Yeah, you do.
And, but for your Bearcats, this bodes well. I mean, if they can't beat Eastern Carolina, then...
or if East Carolina can't beat App State.
Yeah, if East Carolina can't beat App State, then it could be a tough season for the Bearcats. And hopefully they can rest Jared Cumberland for that game as well, because apparently he's load managing in college already, from what I'm hearing from some of my co-hosts. But
It kind of sounds like it. I don't really know what's going on. I got to be honest with you.
Otherwise, I had that ESPN on, and I saw that game was on the little
scrolling bar.
Scrolling bar. Thank you. And I was like, I'm gonna keep my eye on that game. So when that went final, I noted that down and knew that I had to tell you that they had a dookie performance this week. So the American is further getting absolutely blasted.
Yeah.
Wow, that was quite the surprise. Not where I thought that was going at all. I thought that was going to the Memphis defeat this week.
Dennis, any defense for your good friends from East Carolina, the Pirates?
I have no defense for East Carolina. I can't defend such utter mediocrity.
That's
Utter
right.
mediocrity. Can't defend it.
Yeah, just one more tidbit about the American Conference and future opponents in college basketball. None other than the Evansville Purple Aces are going to get 2 matchups against the American Conference. They'll get SMU on Monday, and other than East Carolina
The Pirates.
November 22nd next week.
You hate to see that.
So
Get out the swords.
So hopefully the American Conference has better showings, but Evansville has proven that they are a formidable opponent. So the American Conference may be taking some more, just say, unexpected losses compared to what they were envisioning at the beginning of the season. Moving on, college football last week had some very important games in terms of looking forward to the college football playoff standings at the end of the year. LSU versus Alabama at Bryant-Denny, and Minnesota versus Penn State in Minnesota. One home team lost, and the other home team won. But it may not have been what you expected. You probably already have heard the news by now, since we are doing this the Friday after. LSU beat Bama at Alabama, and Minnesota pulled off the upset against Penn State.
I'm absolutely disgusted.
We're Big Ten. Me and Bobby, we pay more attention to the Big Ten than the SEC, but of course, you always love to see Roll Tide get rolled.
As me and Derek, I believe, successfully predicted.
Yes, that is my personal opinion, and me and Dennis, I do remember making that prediction correct, that LSU would come out on top. Love to see Roll Tide get rolled. Just thought I'd mention that again because I do despise Alabama with every inch of my body. I think both of my co-hosts here can agree with that.
I would.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Awesome. And then Minnesota beating Penn State. This one's interesting.
It is very.
Because, Minnesota going into this game had not faced a quality opponent. Penn State was ranked number 4. You can argue the merit of their status. I know, I believe we were all of the mindset last week that Penn State may or may not have been deserving of that ranking. I know for me personally, I didn't think Penn State was a number 4 team.
Me either.
I know looking into the college football playoff, my predictions for the end of the season, Penn State was not going to be included, and if they did somehow make it, they were going to get smacked by one of the other 3 teams.
Absolutely.
So I was just wondering what you guys thought. Does this say more about Minnesota versus Penn State? And then I'll give my thoughts on it as well.
Dennis, you want to take the lead?
I'll tell you. I mean, number one, to answer your point there, obviously, at this point, Penn State's not going to be looking at a college football playoff berth after this loss.
Right. They still have Ohio State to come.
They still have Ohio State to come,
which Chase Young will be coming back from his suspension from then.
Exactly. But I do believe that this says quite a bit about Minnesota as a team, because whether you don't believe that Penn State is a reputable number 4, as they were, regardless of that, the play of Minnesota to just come out at home
Yeah.
and with all of that intimidation, all that build up, all of that
playing with
dynasty that you're facing,
yeah.
And everyone's saying, well, you're not really worth it. You guys haven't played anybody. Everyone's kind of
which was true.
voting against you, which was true. But the fact that you could come out and despite all of that pressure, despite all of that stress, despite all of that added meaning, to still win that football game, I think it says a great deal about the resolve of the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
Bobby, what are your thoughts besides the fact that Minnesota has some of the best unis in the game?
My thoughts would be quite contrary to Dennis's. I still believe, I think this says a little bit more about Penn State. I think that Penn State is fraudulent, and likewise, I think Minnesota is still fraudulent.
This might be one of our first disagreements in garbage time takes.
And I expect Minnesota to get clapped coming up here in some of their next couple games.
They get Iowa and Wisconsin, I believe.
I think they lose at least one of those games.
I think they win at least one.
Maybe losing both, depending on how Iowa does. I would see them losing probably more to Wisconsin than Iowa, but you never know. Iowa's smash mouth.
They are.
True.
But I don't expect Minnesota to be in the college football playoff when it's all said and done. And if they do, I would have the same mentality as if they played if Penn State would have made it, is that they would have been fraudulent and would have got rolled by whoever.
Yeah.
But it's. As we said, we would have been shocked, and as I predicted last week, if they did win, they did skyrocket up the rankings, I believe, to like number 8 now.
Yep, they're top 10.
Number 8, yep.
So I mean, good for Minnesota to put themselves on the map a little bit. I just hope they don't slip and fall and lose it after fighting all this way to picking up that statement win to try to build that resume up.
Yeah, I'm definitely siding with Bobby here. I think it said more about Penn State. Finally exposed, that they weren't as great of a team as everyone might have thought they were. Minnesota really dominated that game from the beginning. It seemed like Minnesota was always in control of that game, and Penn State was always just trying to find, a play or two to just really claw back into it. But I'm not going to take anything away from Minnesota's win. Obviously, they played well. They did everything they needed to do to get a win. I'm just not sold yet on Minnesota. And in order for them to get into the college football playoff, they're going to have to beat Iowa.
Yes, they will.
They're going to have to beat Wisconsin. And, regardless of whether they lose one of those two games, as long as they don't lose both, I'm pretty sure they'll be Big Ten West champions. They're in the driver's seat there, so that's all but locked up for them, especially after beating Penn State. That's pretty much guaranteed it for them there. But I don't see them, even if they were undefeated going into Ohio State, knocking off Ohio State in the Big Ten championship, and that's what it would be required of them to get into the playoff. Whoever the Big Ten champion is, if they're undefeated, they're going to the playoff, and I just didn't see it being Minnesota. But hey, they could prove me wrong. And
they got 4 games left.
Yep, that would be a great story for the Big Ten, I think, to see Minnesota get in there and PJ Fleck's doing a great job there, sort of similar to the transformation us as the Fire Up Chips saw with Western, what PJ Fleck did there, taking them to, I believe it was the Cotton Bowl against, I don't even remember.
I don't even remember who it was against. I don't like Western.
When Western was we
don't like Western, so we choose not to give them as much attention as possible. I think it said more about Penn State's, mistakes and not being that great of a team than Minnesota, being a college football playoff worthy team. And now moving into, I think, what's going to bring out the most sparks in this conversation.
This is when I'm going to have to hold back, Derek and Bob.
It is officially, and has been for quite some time, Hate Week. Ever since Saturday afternoon after MSU blew it against Illinois, which I was more than happy to see, Hate Week began for us as Michigan fans against Michigan State.
And one more thing, just as Michigan and Michigan State fans, between the both of us, if you guys didn't get a chance to see that Bad Blood documentary that was showing on Fox Sports 1 last night, we had the opportunity to watch it as we were watching the tail end of the MSU game. But it was essentially encompasses the rivalry and the history of the Michigan State-Michigan rivalry, and somewhat makes the case that it's the biggest rivalry in college sports, between two sports even.
Yes.
If you haven't had a chance to watch that, please watch that. It's great.
It was
well done. They brought in a lot of icons from both Michigan and MSU kind of talk about what the rivalry was like firsthand, and just wanted to preface this conversation by giving that a shout out because I was really impressed by that whole documentary. We certainly had a fun time.
We did
chatting and reminiscing about some of the old moments in the rivalry, both highs and lows for each of us.
Yeah, for Michigan, just off the top of my head, they brought back Jake Long. He was a really great offensive lineman for us. Also brought back Devin Gardner. I'll refrain from comment on Devin Gardner. He's a character. And he was a good
TV personality.
Yes, he's a great TV personality. I think that's as far as I'll go on Devin Gardner. Because let's just say I don't think he ever beat MSU, which is not something you want to say about a Michigan quarterback.
We had 4 undefeated against Michigan quarterback Kirk Cousins, and Draymond Green were present, and the football coach Mark D'Antonio and Tom Izzo were both featured. John Beilein did make an appearance,
that was really
and
cool.
Juwan Howard, I believe, made an appearance for the Michigan.
John Beilein made one. Juwan Howard made one. I believe Jimmy King was the other guy.
With Lloyd Carr? Lloyd Carr was out there.
Yeah, Lloyd Carr was there too. I was disappointed that Jim Harbaugh wasn't in there.
Yeah,
I think that would have been nice to see.
So many comments from him.
Yes. But yeah, it is officially Hate Week. And, Bobby, let's get started.
I know you've been chomping at the bit.
I have been chomping at the bit.
I need to mediate this conversation.
Dennis.
The timers or something.
Yeah. So just to give some background history on this will be the 112th meeting total after the previous 111. Michigan currently leads the all-time record 70-36 with 5 ties. The all-time series since the Big Ten, Michigan leads 37-30-2, so MSU is definitely making a run at us since they joined the Big Ten. And in terms of the trophy series for Paul Bunyan, 37-27 and 2 ties in favor of Michigan. And Michigan currently has won 2 out of the past 3. In terms of Jim Harbaugh's career, he's 2-2. Mark D'Antonio, I believe, is 8-4. So, he had Mark D'Antonio that leaves him as 8-2 against our previous 2 head coaches in Brady Hoke and Rich Rod.
Or you said he was 8-4.
Oh yes, 6-2. Sorry, yes, that would leave him 6-2 against Rich Rod and Brady Hoke.
2 of your favorites.
Yeah, two of my absolute favorites of Michigan coaching legends. Yeah, that's for sure. Michigan does have the longest win streak of 14 games in a row, but that was really before MSU even knew how to play football.
I mean, that's probably fair.
It really is.
I
wasn't really taking that as a shot, but really, that was more taking, sort of downplaying the significance of that. It was 1916 to 1929, so really, MSU hadn't really developed as a college football school at that point. But now, one thing I really liked about the documentary was, and I agreed with it. I hadn't really thought about it, but MSU with Mark D'Antonio, they've put some respect on their name now. I know for me personally, I still don't respect MSU. I think they're a bunch of squids.
I don't think you'll.
I will never ever respect MSU. I don't think. But I think it was interesting to see them say, this game means as much to Michigan as it does to MSU. For a really long time, I think you could argue that this game was far more important to MSU than Michigan. Michigan was always focused on Ohio State. We didn't give MSU the attention that maybe MSU thought they deserved from us. And, for Mark D'Antonio's career, he's made us pay for that sort of sentiment. And I think when you saw last year, with the revenge tour, taking care of business, Michigan for the first time ever celebrating with Paul Bunyan on the field, that was something we had never done before. That's something I learned from the documentary. You could get a sense that this rivalry has sort of, it's going to a new level, which is really great to see because as the documentary mentioned again, you can't have a rivalry if both teams suck or if one team's completely dominating the other. 2 great teams make a rivalry.
That's right.
And I think, with MSU's recent dominance in D'Antonio's career, Michigan's trying to swing the pendulum back towards us. And this is where my trash talking begins. MSU is toast. Mark D'Antonio is toast. That epic collapse against Illinois that MSU fans were making fun of us for almost happening against Illinois. It happened to them, and it was catastrophic. Easily one of the worst losses, if not the worst loss of D'Antonio's career, because it was a breakdown of all the fundamentals that D'Antonio has preached throughout his coaching career. Being tough, being focused, fourth quarter toughness, playing through to the end of the game, focusing on fundamentals, limiting turnovers, and all of that fell apart, and it was an absolute beautiful sight to behold, in my personal opinion. And I don't see this game being any different tomorrow. I think Michigan is going to smack MSU around. I think they're going to cover the spread, which is 13.5. I could see it being 20 points, 21. MSU is not going to be able to hang with us. It'll be competitive for maybe 10 minutes. And MSU sure is going to bring some intensity, but they're too depleted injury-wise.
Oh my God, it's bad.
And you can make a case as an MSU fan maybe that if they were fully healthy, this would be a closer game, and I think that's a valid point. But I don't think it would change the overall outcome. And the offensive line has taken some really bad injuries. Wide receiver core is depleted. Running backs have transferred. MSU is just a dejected, depleted team, and I have a good feeling that Michigan is going to put the nail in Mark D'Antonio's coaching coffin.
And it's time for the defense.
I'd hate to say that I think that I'd go into this game thinking that, I think the 13-point spread is a little much, but I can understand why it's in place, and I'd be lying if I said that. The logic in me didn't think that Michigan State didn't have a prayer tomorrow. But certainly that is not what I'm going to stand here
of course.
and say.
Of course,
and I would expect nothing less.
As a Michigan State faithful, I think that as I've been preaching all year, Michigan State has had, as they've been called out for many times this season, had a very lackluster offensive game plan. It's been a lot of the same. And then not a lot of creativity, same old players, same old thing. Nothing really exceptional, and the defense just kind of keeping us in some of the games, and then us normally falling apart. But I don't think that will be the case tomorrow. Tomorrow, I think you'll see the unleashing of every trick play, every crazy thing that Michigan State's been saving all year.
But is it even going to matter?
Back, right?
Is it even going to matter? Because I don't think it will.
They can't. You can't hold anything back. And if I'm Mark D'Antonio, as I said last week against Illinois, but I'll repeat it again. This is a line in the sand week, man. And all the smack, all the chirping that we've been hearing, just kind of from our fellow Michigan friends, saying Michigan State has no chance tomorrow.
Because you don't.
They're buns. We stink and all this kind of stuff. The beautiful thing is that it all can be righted tomorrow. Tomorrow, if Michigan State pulls a victory out, no matter how trash we are, we will still have picked up that one win that gives us credibility.
That's right.
And I think it's important to point out that while Michigan State certainly had higher expectations for the season, I think it's important to note that even in what would be considered a down year, we have a real chance at bowl eligibility still. Not that is my goal for the year, seeing us make a bowl game, but
on the last game of the year.
But for many teams, a good year would be making a bowl game.
That's true.
And for many teams in the Big Ten, that would even be the case. Just making a bowl game would be considered turning it around.
Yeah, Indiana, Illinois are prime examples of that.
And for us, a down year where basically everything has gone wrong. Everybody's, there's transfers, there's calling for firings, there's everything above.
Your offense stinks.
We're still with an opportunity against Rutgers and Maryland following this game. Two teams that I would say are probably a little bit worse than we are.
I would hope so.
An opportunity to make a bowl game, and I will be in attendance as a diehard Michigan State fan on the November 30th. At Spartan Stadium when we play none other than the Maryland Terrapins for potential bowl eligibility on the line. But you know what? We might not even need the Maryland game because on Saturday we have an opportunity to beat the Michigan Wolverines. And as I was alluding to, I believe Brad Salem, the first play of the game, will come out firing with some sort of trickery.
You better hope Srad Balaam shows up, because Brad Salem all year has been nothing but garbage.
I think you might need a couple onside kicks to go your way.
Here's the thing. I think Brian Lewerke's going to come out and stun a few people. I think that Michigan State is starving. They're starving for a win.
That's
and they'll do anything. They'll do anything that they can. Nothing to motivate a team like a rivalry game. And in a rivalry game, anything can happen. And I think Michigan State. I think it'll be a closer game than people are getting credit for. I'm hoping Michigan doesn't cover the spread. Because
it's going to be complete domination.
The way I see it,
I love this.
The way I see it, I don't think they'll cover. Because I think Michigan's a little bit more fraudulent than they think. I think they're a little better than they actually are, which is a common theme every year. But I remember before the season when Derek was young, that it was college football playoff or bust.
And I wasn't the only one saying that.
And came out in the beginning of the season and proceeded to lose that within the first couple weeks. And not to say that we've made much of a better run at it.
That's right.
But our expectations were not college football playoff or bust.
Well, I do think MSU had big expectations going into this year, and as per normal, they fell flat on their face.
No, I think tomorrow we will make a stride to meeting those expectations against the Michigan Wolverines.
You have no chance. I can assure you that you have no chance of beating us tomorrow.
12 noon Eastern time.
Remember when Dennis said there was no chance?
Yes,
that's true.
Except the Bengals are garbage.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
But
they are.
The Bengals are trash, and Dennis, unfortunately, was blind to his own team's trashness.
Derek, I've seen you be wrong on these very things.
I've been burned
so many times.
Just in the past 3 years I've lived here at CMU, I've been burned countless times on guarantees. Yep. But when I wasn't burned last year? I was not burned last year when I guaranteed a win against MSU. I was burned when I guaranteed a win against Ohio State, as I've been burned for the past however many years since Denard Robinson happened to pull off a victory. But nonetheless, I digress from that. Here's what's going to happen. MSU can bring as much energy and motivation as they want. But the fact of the matter is...
We've got trickery. We've got low expectations.
The fact of the matter is I can't imagine that locker room. As much as you want to hype yourself up, losing to Illinois like that has got to take a ton out of you. And these are college kids, just like us. Imagine what we would feel like coming off. We had game against Illinois 1. We're dominating throughout, and then all of a sudden Illinois comes and beats us on the last couple plays of the game. That's got to be absolutely brutal as a college student to have to deal with that. And I just don't see any way that, MSU can pick themselves up off the floor. They got a 10 count right now. And, I think you're going to see Michigan just continue to pound them through the mat into the ground this week. And I won't be surprised if Mark D'Antonio doesn't make an appearance next year as head coach, because I don't see it getting any better for MSU from here on out. I think next year they're going to be even worse, which I didn't think was possible. But then again, they went 3-9 however many years ago. They just don't have the talent to compete with us. They're too hurt right now. I think Michigan has one guy
on the injury report. One,
and he's been out for a while. Stuber, he had an ACL injury earlier this year. MSU, the list goes on and on and on about the various injuries they have, and I just don't think they have enough depth, enough skill to really, account for that, and it's just going to be an absolute whitewash, and I'm more than excited for tomorrow at noon.
Yeah, me as well. I'm more excited for tomorrow at noon as well, because I think that it will be a better game than people are giving it credit for. I think that the Michigan State Spartans will be more ready to play than people expect, and I'm expecting there's only one team with expectations tomorrow, and it is not the Michigan State Spartans. I mean, when the spread is 14 or 13, whatever you said, the Michigan State Spartans aren't even projected to have a prayer in this
That's
game.
right.
Too tough game. And that's exactly, if Michigan State gets blown out of the water, it'll be what is expected to happen. And you love to see that. I love Michigan State playing as the underdog here. I love I love our chances with trickery and surprise at our side because
you have nothing to lose.
We have nothing exactly, Josh. We have nothing to lose, and it's not like Michigan has any tape on any sort of trickery or fancy plays that we've done because, as I said, we've done none up to this point. Obviously we're not going to win the game on just trickery alone. Probably, I mean that could definitely help us, but I think our defense will hold decently. I don't think this will be an extremely high-scoring game, especially because I know we won't put up a ton of points. But I also don't know if Michigan will put up a ton of points either. And when it's a low-scoring game, anything can happen in a rivalry game. One trick play, one fumble here, one interception there could pull the difference. And if we keep it low-scoring, anything is possible for the Michigan State Spartans. And Paul Bunyan in Ann Arbor could be running around with Michigan State.
I've definitely seen crazier things happen. 2015 is something that will haunt me for the rest of my life. But here's what I hate about MSU fans, and I am more than prepared to ruffle some feathers here. And me and Bobby talked about this a little bit yesterday. The one thing that has always annoyed me about MSU fans is the fact that if they win the game, they get to sit there and gloat about how they won the game and how we're trash. But if we win the game, they just say, 1, oh, we were expected to lose anyway, so it's not that impressive. Or 2, oh, hey, congratulations, you're still trash, and now you get to get clapped by Ohio State. As Michigan fans, as Michigan fans, we can never, gain an upper hand on an MSU fan. And one of my favorite sayings: "Go green, go white. Can't read, can't write." That's and the reason people go to MSU is because they couldn't get into Michigan. That's a verified fact. It's just MSU fans. They have a certain way of getting under your skin, but they never are able, to take anything back because they just resort to these bull jive defense mechanisms of either 1, you're still trash, or 2, we were expected to lose anyway. Congratulations, you beat us. Whoop-de-doo.
It's no surprise to see Michigan fans out here with pompous attitudes as normal, thinking that they're better than us. When
we are.
Only a few short years ago, the tables would turn and they can turn on you like a dime.
They can, and they're currently turning.
You never know what can happen, and that's what I'm making out. I'm not out here preaching to the choir that Michigan State's got any means of a great chance in this game. I think we do have a chance because it is a rivalry game, as I've outlined,
and it's college football.
But you know what? I've got faith in my boys. I think they'll be a little bit more prepared than people will give them credit for. I've got more faith in Mark D'Antonio than most.
You do,
and I think that his hatred for Michigan and his love of the rivalry will hopefully inspire the team as well, and we just might see something special.
One thing, 2 things. First, the reason I talk like this is because come basketball season, MSU is dominant, and they're preseason favorites to win it all. And so I know going into this year, Michigan's in a sort of flux that against MSU in basketball will probably get swept. And so I have to take pride in the one thing I can this year, and that's Michigan football. As bad as we've been in some games, we are trending upward while MSU is trending straight into the ground. And, I just have to get my shots in before basketball season comes around, and I have to deal with MSU fans everywhere saying, oh, you're trash again.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing that I will have to say about that whole ordeal is that number one, I don't hear myself out. I never during basketball season make pompous statements.
No, that's
calling out Michigan fans as Derek previously just did about 2 minutes ago on this podcast. You will not hear me make any sort of those expectations. I actually had very low expectations compared to most MSU fans, very tempered expectations compared to what for this season, as I've outlined previously in this podcast. And I think that that's just that's just a statement to Michigan fans and their attitudes, as I've previously mentioned.
No respect.
Being elevated and pompous at times, in that one of the things that I appreciate about at least most of the MSU fans I know and most of the MSU players that I've seen is that they're, humble in their approach.
Debatable.
And I don't think anyone would even associate that word with the University of Michigan, and that's fine by me.
One thing, one thing I can never, say about Bobby is that he, is gonna rip into me every time MSU beats us. He takes a different approach than most that I know. I think, as he said, his friends may not talk that way, but my friends do. And so this is just the way, I've been brought up to trash talk. I've got a couple really good buddies that we really trade barbs with, and that's just the way I've grown up. That's the way I will continue to talk, because I do believe that we are the better team and the better university. But one thing I will always give Bobby credit for is, he doesn't really, get on me, even though I get on him. But I will never, ever say that Bobby is one to really, initiate the trash talk. Most of the time it's me, and I'm perfectly okay with that.
Well, as long as you're already admitting that.
But as we've seen right here, Bobby's not afraid of backing down.
No, he's not, and I love
definitely
that.
Definitely not. He definitely stands his ground in a game that, in my opinion, will be quite lopsided.
For Michigan State, right?
I'll let everyone at home be able to answer that question for themselves.
All right. Well, Dennis, I know you didn't really get a chance to jump in, so we're just gonna move on from Hate Week here. But I think the thing I definitely think you should watch the documentary that came out on FS1.
I just had to shout that out. It was such great, and even especially watching it together.
Yes, it was fun. It was a great time.
Just to think about how we were like, oh, I hated that guy from Michigan, how we were feeling at that very second.
Yeah.
When Lloyd Carr was speaking versus when Rich Rod, they were showing the Rich Rod piece, and then Harbaugh coming in, and then the transition from D'Antonio coming in, and it was a really great piece.
Yeah, that was really fun. So we're gonna move on here to NFL. This week, Lions and Bengals are both in action. Last week, the Bengals were on bye, correct?
No, we lost to Baltimore.
That's right.
Might as well have been on a bye, though.
Yeah, you might as well. You did
get
smacked around by Lamar
Jackson. A big L.
That's right. Sorry, unfortunately, the Bengals are so irrelevant at this point. I forgot that they existed, just like the American Conference.
Oh, big 2-1 right there.
So for the Bengals, Dennis.
Yes, sir.
Who do you have this week, and what do you think's going to happen?
I've got Oakland. Come on. At this point, the only thing that I'm looking forward to is watching Ryan Finley improve. And
okay.
He had an okay start against Baltimore last week. I think he threw for 200 yards. I think he threw both touchdowns. Only turned the ball over once, which was exciting to see. But just as a team this year, it's just terrible. Just can't expect to win the franchise. It is. And we were this way in the 90s. I remember growing up with stories,
bring back Marvin Lewis.
Stories from the abyss that my dad would always tell me.
Yeah, Dennis.
I don't miss Marvin Lewis. And I'll tell you why I don't miss Marvin Lewis, because Marvin Lewis is now at Arizona State with Herm Edwards.
Oh,
and
I couldn't even get on an NFL roster.
If Marvin Lewis was still here, Andy Dalton would still be a quarterback, and we would still be 0-9. That's my opinion on Marvin Lewis.
So what I'm hearing is it doesn't matter either way who's the coach. That you should have just kept Marvin Lewis, because at least he brought you to the playoffs.
He did bring us to the playoffs, but he didn't produce in the playoffs.
Ever.
And I'm of the strong opinion that you have to give a head coach at least 2 years. And would you like to see a win by now? Absolutely. Out of Zach Taylor. And do I think he'll get one this year? Yes, I do.
When is that going to be?
I think it'll be against Miami.
Doesn't Miami have 2 wins, Dennis?
I think Miami does have 2 wins.
So I'm not...
Well, you know who else has the 2 wins that's on our schedule is the New York Jets.
Ooh,
that could be a win.
So we basically have 2 shots against two win teams.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the Bengals join the infamous
Roman 16 club,
the dynamic duo of the Detroit Football Lions and the Cleveland Browns of recent. Dennis, what is your prediction score-wise for the Bengals-Raiders game? Do the Bengals even top 13 points this week?
I think they do, and I really, really do think they do. I think last week, a tough matchup against, obviously Baltimore's got a great defense, but also they were just on the field too much.
Yeah.
They were just on the field a lot.
Didn't
put up a
help
lot
that
of points,
Baltimore, I think, picked up 2 defensive tubs.
Yeah,
the pick 6 of like 88 yards or something crazy like that.
Yeah, they got a couple of good things defensively that went their way. In terms of score this week, I'm going to go with Oakland 34, Cincinnati 20.
Oof. I think you're being a bit generous there.
I've got I don't really have much to say on this one. I think it's going to be an Oakland win, but I've got score at 28-14.
I was going to go 24-10 Oakland.
Okay, so we all have 14-point differentials. We'll see how that turns out for us.
Yeah. Moving
Where
on.
are the Lions?
The Detroit Lions. We're
disgusted.
We're disgusted. Some more really devastating news coming out of camp. Matt Stafford, highly unlikely to play this week against Dallas. I will be in attendance for what I thought at the beginning of the year was going to be a really competitive possible win for the Lions. But that was really, I was talking about nail in the coffin with Mark D'Antonio earlier. This might be the game that puts the nail in the coffin for the Detroit Lions. We could not beat Chicago last week.
Oh my God! We should have beat Chicago.
We made Mitch Trubisky look like an all-pro quarterback. The defense, they stepped up late when they had to, but unfortunately the offense was so inept. Jeff Driscoll, former Cincinnati Bengal great.
Great. Give me a break.
Yeah, quote-unquote around great right there. He struggled. And I don't foresee anything changing this week. I would have loved to see Stafford come out and play, but for his own personal health, clearly that is not the right thing for him to do, which sucks. I was really hoping, that the Lions would pull this one off because I don't think Dallas is that great of a team.
Fraudulent.
Yeah, exactly. They're one of the fraudulent teams of the NFL, but unfortunately, I just don't see it unfolding in the Lions' way this week. They needed a line in the sand game last week against Chicago. They needed the line in the sand the week before against Oakland.
They needed a line in the sand for about 20 years.
That's the truth, and
It's been a rough go.
I just don't see it changing this game. Early on in the year, we had playoff aspirations, and in a matter of 4 weeks, those have been all but crushed. Bobby, what's your thoughts?
I think that, unfortunately, Ezekiel Elliott, who looked terrible last week, will look like an all-pro again this week against us. Against our abysmal run defense. Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper might just have 2 tubs between them.
Yeah.
And I expect Jeff Driscoll to look like a backup again.
Right.
I don't even know what our win condition is in this game. And that's,
probably like 12%.
Here's the thing, for Michigan State, I say trickery and a rivalry game will potentially be enough to bring us through.
It doesn't work like that in the NFL.
Here, there's nothing. There's just nothing. The Lions will not run any trick plays. They'll stick with their game plan, and their defense is not good. Their quarterback currently is not good. I don't really know why.
Our running back game is not good.
It's not good. We just can never get anything going for more than a week at a time. We'll win and then we'll have to lose 3 times momentum before we can ever get back to that win. Again, after this point, I think it might be time to join the Miami and the Jets discussion and just start tanking again.
Yeah.
ESPN has given the Lions a 33% chance to win this.
And I think that's generous. Maybe they haven't heard the news that Staff is out. But I think, I wouldn't really be opposed to, shelving Stafford for the rest of the year and trying to get ready for next year.
I feel terrible for having him on the roster at this point.
Yeah, really. He's, coaches were calling him elite. It's been a long time since people have started calling Stafford an elite quarterback. I know personally, I've always stuck up for Stafford, within my friend group, within my family. He's the best quarterback I've ever seen play for the Lions. I'm sure he's probably the best quarterback most Lions fans have seen play for the Lions.
The competition isn't high, to be fair.
That's also very true. But, it stinks because he deserves more than what he's gotten from, his team in the past.
In his front office and all the above.
Yeah. One more quick thing. Our favorite segment here, the right bench ballers.
Yes.
We're going to have to make it a little bit quick here because Bobby's got somewhere to be. Bobby, who do you got this week?
Well, this week, folks, as I mentioned before, I had to go back to the Michigan State versus Seton Hall game. really a great performance for Michigan State, as I mentioned prior. But we had none of the, I'm going to have none other than Malik Hall, which I don't think is a surprise to most people that watch the game. He's not a starter for the Michigan State Spartans. He hasn't even, if I remember correctly, scored a point up to this current game, and I know it's only this is only like 3 games into the year. But he came out shot 7 for 7, 17 points, 5 boards, and had the game-winning bucket for the Michigan State Spartans to put us over the edge against Seton Hall. And so you'll love to see some production.
Yeah.
Thomas Kithier is a little bit more of a veteran for us. I think he's only a sophomore, but he's still been there.
Yeah. But more of a role player.
More of a role player.
Malik Hall has a chance to really become something.
Malik Hall has a chance to become something, and we saw glimpses of that. 3-point shooting game, I guess, emerging a little bit. He went 3 for 3. But no, he really played well, and he was basically a crucial piece. With Xavier Tillman not really putting up anything in the points department, he was crucial in getting that win for us.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go with Darius Slayton of the New York Giants last week. He had a pretty solid performance. Him and Daniel Jones have really had a connection this year since they're both rookies. They've been able to develop that chemistry. He had a really nice performance, 10 receptions, 121 yards with 2 tubs. Maybe he's not per se a right bench baller per se, but he's definitely been an overlooked player on that roster with Golden Tate and Sterling Shepard in that receiving core. But just thought I'd shed some light on Darius Slayton, who over his past 3 games actually has 4 TDs, 5 on the year. So Darius Slayton really making his impact present last week. Dennis, who do you have?
Yeah, so I was sitting there watching the Monday night San Francisco-Seattle game, as most people should have been, because it was a fantastic football game.
Was.
And so my right bench baller is coming from that game. It's none other than Jacob Hollister. He's a tight end for Seattle. Went off for 62 yards and a touchdown, a key touchdown early in the third quarter that actually gave Seattle their first lead of the game after being down 10-0 early. And so he's really stepped it up. He only has 137 yards on the season. He got picked up 68 of those this Monday. So he's really come on the last couple weeks. Actually, he caught 2 touchdowns the week before. And prior to that, he had not caught a touchdown in the Seattle uniform.
Yep.
So definitely...
there you go. Epitome of the right bench
He's really coming on. I'm
give
excited.
him some love out there. The
Jacob
bench
Hollister.
players coming through. Jacob Hollister, Darius Slayton, and Malik Hall.
That's right.
That's going to do it for us this week. Follow us on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, Podbean.
All at Garbage Time Takes.
Yep, all at Garbage Time Takes. We appreciate your feedback. Give us some topics to debate, and we thank you for listening. And on a 1,
2,
3,
peace!